Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. I am super excited to recommend you guys some books that I think are perfect to help pull you out of a reading slump. As a reader, being in a book slump is one of the worst feelings when reading is normally one of your favorite hobbies, but you just aren't feeling it at all, or every book you try and pick up just isn't hitting. I hope one of these books will do it for you and pull you out of your slump if you're currently in one. Even if you're not currently in a reading slump, if you want to watch this video, save some of these book recs, have them on hand maybe if any of them sound enticing to you in case you one day find yourself in a slump. Even if you're not in a slump, these are some of my very favorite books that I highly recommend. All these books are so entertaining, so engaging, and I had the best time reading all of them, so I hope you do as well. With that, let's jump right in. I want to start with thrillers because I feel like when I'm in a slump, thrillers are definitely what I reach for first. Usually they're very fast paced and such page turners that keep you on the edge of your seat and really pull you in and keep my attention. Also, there's usually some kind of like plot twist or reveal that we're leading up to, so it motivates you to keep reading until the very end. The first book I want to recommend is The Push by Ashley Audrain. This one is following our main character and her journey with motherhood. The first child that our main character has, she just does not bond with this child at all. She feels absolutely no connection. She's like, what is wrong with me? Is it me? Am I the problem? Or is it my baby? You as the reader don't know who to believe either. You're like, is it our main character? Is something wrong with her? You think you might know what's going on, but then weird things happen and you're like, wait, is this baby like evil? What is going on? And then she ends up having a second baby, and she does have a strong bond and connection with this child, and it's everything she imagined motherhood being and more. But this book ends up taking some really wild turns. I never knew where it was going. It just kept twisting, and it was the craziest journey to follow. Very, very fast paced. It is one of those books where you're not going to want to put it down because literally each chapter is like 1 to 2 pages long. So whenever I was reading it, I would be like, okay, one more chapter, one more chapter, one more chapter, and I'm gonna put it down. And it was just so hard to put down because all the chapters are super, super short. So I just flew through this one. There's really great commentary on motherhood in here. It's definitely one where you're gonna put yourself in the main character's shoes. Lots of frustrating things happen in this book. I had very visceral reactions to. So I think it is such a good one to help pull you out of a slump. Next, I wanna recommend The Kindor Killing by Peter Swanson. This is one of my favorite thrillers ever. I will not shut up about this book. I need everyone to read it because I love it and it is so good, and I think you guys will love it too if you've not already read it. All you need to know going into this book is that we're following our two main characters, Ted and Lily. They end up meeting at this airport bar one day. They're like seated next to one another. They start talking. The more they're drinking, the more they're spilling their life secrets. Ted ends up revealing to Lily that he thinks his wife is cheating on him, and he makes this offhand comment that because of this, he wants to kill his wife. And Lily is like, yeah, you should kill your wife and I'm gonna help you. That's all you need to know because it is a crazy journey from there. I loved the way the story was told and the structure of it. We get both Ted and Lily's perspectives, and we get dual timelines as well. So we see Ted and Lily's backstories and kind of why they are the way they are, what led them to the point they are at now. It's one of those books where each chapter ends off on a cliffhanger. I would be so into Ted's story and it would end off on a cliffhanger, and I was not ready to jump to Lily's chapter, but then the same exact thing would happen and I would get so invested in what Lily was going through. Didn't want it to end, and I wasn't ready to continue on to Ted's next chapter, and it just kept happening over and over. It was so gripping, had me on the edge of my seat. The audiobook is also great as well. It has 2 narrators for Ted and Lily, and I thought it was really well done. This book also has 2 books that come after it in a series that take place in the same universe. Book 2 is The Kind We're Saving. I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as this one, but it does give you closure for some of the things that happen at the end of this book, so I would recommend it for that reason because it wrapped things up nicely. Book 3 is called A Talent for Murder. It actually just came out recently. Haven't read it yet, but definitely plan to soon. But this one is such a favorite for me. I am obsessed with this book. The next book I want to recommend is The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. Sally Hepworth is one of my favorite authors. I love all of her books and would highly recommend them. I think this one is probably the most fast-paced and engaging of all her reads. This book is perfect if thrillers entice you, but but you're not really into things that are more dark and gruesome, this I would say is more suspenseful literary fiction. Definitely some darker topics in here, but the way it's done, it doesn't feel too heavy, at least in my opinion, but definitely check trigger warnings for all of these books if you are sensitive to anything. All that I knew going into this book and all that I'm going to tell you guys, because I don't want to spoil anything, is that we're following our main character Lucy and her relationship with her mother-in-law Diana. This book is very similar in structure to The Kindor Killing, and that we get both Lucy and Diana's perspectives. It flips back and forth, and then we also see things in the past and things in the present. We get Lucy and Diana's backstories and learn again why they are the way they are. It's very much a character study and kind of a study in family and relationship dynamics. One thing I really enjoyed in this book is that it would show the same situation from both characters' perspectives, and you kind of saw how both women took the same scenario but in completely different ways. It kind of made me take a step back and put myself in other people's shoes in different situations and see how different things may be perceived differently by different people because of our life experiences. This is also one that was so engaging. Had no idea what was going to happen until the very end when everything was revealed. Sally Hepworth is Australian too, so she has that witty sense of humor that she always weaves into her books. So there's definitely some comedic relief in here as well. I would recommend all of her books on audio as well because they're narrated by an Australian narrator, and to me the accent just makes it so much more engaging and entertaining. Next, I want to recommend Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. This one follows the disappearance of these women 11 years in the past, and they're all from the same community. They just up and vanished. No one knows what happened to them until flash forward 11 years later in the present. One of the women has returned, so all these secrets are coming out about what happened. This is a very engaging one, again, because we get multiple points of views and we also see past and present timelines. I had so many theories while I was reading this book. There were so many things that threw me off and all my predictions were incorrect. I did not see the reveal coming at all. This is definitely a very action-packed thriller. It dumps you into the thick of things from page one. Nothing is spoon-fed to you. You definitely have to like figure things out and piece them together as you go, which I really enjoyed. Whenever I put this book down, I would be thinking about it and like coming up with all these theories to what I thought was going on, and I just could not wait till the next time I was able to pick this one up and read it. I think this is definitely one that will get you excited about reading again if you have kind of lost that spark and that joy. Would highly recommend. I also want to recommend None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This is a very recent read for me and one of my favorite reads of the whole entire year so far. I don't have the physical book with me because as soon as I finished it, I gave it to my mom to borrow. I was like, you have to read this book. This one follows these two women who are both in the same pub on the same night celebrating their birthdays. They end up meeting one another and they're like, oh my gosh, we have the same birthday. We're birthday twins. One of the women is actually a really well-known podcaster, and she hosts women on her podcast who are very successful, and she shares their success stories. So this other woman proposes the idea that she should be featured on the podcast. She's like, hey, I know you normally feature really successful women and their stories on your podcast. I'm not successful yet, but I'm currently in the process of making some big life changes, and I think it would be really interesting to mix things up for your podcast and document my story. And it is the craziest journey. There were so many times in this book where I was like, okay, I think I'm piecing things together. I think I have it figured out. And then a random piece to the story would be dumped on us that did not fit in with anything I was thinking and would completely throw me off. And it kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. This book was such a page turner. It was so chilling. I was so invested. Sometimes I think thrillers are definitely more plot centered than character centered, but I think this one did a great job at balancing both. I was very invested in the characters as well. This book also has a mixed media aspect to it because we have the podcast element and then the podcast gets turned into a Netflix documentary in the book. So the audio I would also recommend because it kind of has like the sound effects with the mixed media, and then it has a full cast as well. I listened to both the audio and then read the physical book in tandem, and I would recommend both ways very highly. One of my favorite thrillers of the year and that I've ever read. Next, I have a series to recommend you guys that I think will work well to transition from thrillers into romance because it's kind of a suspenseful dark romance, I would say. That is the Bck series by St. Abbey. I believe these are still all available on Kindle Unlimited because that's how I read it. They're actually 5 novellas. You can read them all individually, or there is a bind up of all novellas in one bigger book available. I read it as is the 5 novellas, which I would recommend doing if you are in a slump. Sometimes that sense of accomplishment that comes with finishing a book quickly can be all you need to pull you out of a slump and make you more motivated when you're hitting your reading goals and reading more. But the Bck series follows our main character, Lana, and she is actually a serial killer, but she's a morally gray character. She's not doing bad things just for the sake of doing bad things. She has motivation and reason behind what she's doing, so you do have a reason to root for her. And she is actually dating the FBI agent on her case who is trying to find the serial killer who is actually her. This book will give you anxiety, but in the best way, because you're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was freaking out. I needed to know how everything was going to play out and what was going to happen with their relationship and to our main character. I was so invested in the story. Each of the novellas ends off on the craziest cliffhanger too, so you'll immediately want to jump into the next one. I next have another bind up of some novellas to recommend you guys, but these are romance. This is Loath to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. These are 3 of her STEMinist novellas all in one. In this book we have Under One Roof, Stuck With You, and Below Zero. Each novella follows a different woman working in a STEM profession and their romance with a different man. I think my favorite in here was probably Stuck With You, but I feel like this is a great one if you have read from Ali Hazelwood and haven't yet read these and just want more from her. Or if you haven't read Ali Hazelwood, I think that's even better because this will give you kind of a taste test to see if you like her books and her writing. These are just the perfect palette cleansers. I think if you just want something romantic, spicy, and cute, but you don't want to commit to a full-length novel, these would be perfect. I next have some standalone romances to recommend you guys. I think sometimes when you're in a slump, the thought of starting a series can be a little bit daunting. So standalone romances are the way to go, I think, in that case. I first want to recommend Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. This one follows our main character, Nora, who is a screenwriter. She typically writes these very fluffy cupcake rom-com type scripts for like the equivalent of the Hallmark Channel in this book. But in her personal life, her husband has just left her and her 2 children, so she ends up writing a script based on her real life. The script ends up getting picked up by Hollywood and it's being made into a major motion picture, and they're actually filming some of the scenes at Nora's house. So the actor who's playing her husband in the movie ends up needing to crash at Nora's for a little bit, and from there it follows his relationship with Nora and how things progress. This one is the perfect length for when you're in a slump. I would not recommend picking up very lengthy books if you are trying to get out of a slump. This one's under 300 pages, so it is perfect. Annabelle Monaghan's writing is very to the point. She doesn't say more than is necessary, but at the same time it's not lacking at all in details. The conflict in here really gripped me because I thought it would be resolved quickly, but it ends up being kind of a suspenseful element added to the story in addition to the romance, because I just needed to know what was going to happen. So it really pulled me in and had me flipping the pages with so much anticipation until the very end, because I needed to know how everything was going to turn out. Next, I want to recommend One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is another one of those books that I will not stop talking about because I love it, and I feel like everyone that I've recommended it to has loved it as well. In this book, we follow our main character, Emma, and Emma ends up getting married to her high school sweetheart, who is the love of her life and her soulmate. One day, he is away on a work trip, and his helicopter that he's in goes down and crashes, and he is then presumed dead. Emma grieves the loss of her husband, but she's able to move forward. Years later, she ends up reconnecting with a guy she knew from high school who was just a friend, but they actually form a more romantic connection, and she ends up getting engaged to this new man. However, while she is now newly engaged, she gets a call that her husband, who was presumed dead, is not actually dead. He is alive and he is coming home to her. I promise none of that is a spoiler. You literally find all of that out in the first few pages. It then becomes this impossible decision that Emma has to make of which man she is going to choose. I literally had no clue who she was going to pick up until the very last moment. I was really in this book with her. It was such an emotional, heart-wrenching read, but so good. Despite this one being a little bit more heavy and emotional, I could not put this one down and read it in like 2 sittings because I just needed to know who she was going to pick. It was all I could think about. It's a very all-consuming book. Definitely one of those books that you put yourself in the main character's shoes. You take the journey along with her. You get so invested. I think it's one that will pull you in and keep you invested the whole way through. Next, I want to recommend The No Show by Beth O'Leary. All you need to know about this book is that 3 women are dating the same man and they all get stood up by him on Valentine's Day. This is the one book that I hesitate to put on this list just because it did take me a little bit to get into, but I think the payoff is so worth it. I've heard people say that this is a romance that reads like a thriller, and I feel like that is so accurate because the things that are revealed in here I did not see coming at all. They had me so shook. It's one of those books that once you figure out what's going on, you're like, how did I not see that before? It makes you want to go back to page 1 and reread it to pick up on all the clues you missed the first time around. Definitely a book that has stuck with me and I think about all the time, and I just think that the reveals in it were done so well. That's why I'm including it on this list. I think it will motivate you to keep reading the whole way through. Next, I have some sports romances to recommend, which are my personal favorites. The first 2 I want to recommend are The Cheat Sheet and The Rule Book, both by Sarah Adams. These books are part of a duology. You don't have to read them in order. If one sounds better to you, then definitely pick up whichever one interests you, but I would recommend reading them in order just to get the full picture. In The Cheat Sheet, we're following Nathan and Bree. Nathan is a quarterback in the NFL. Bree is a ballerina, and they have been friends for years, but they both secretly have romantic feelings for one another. Neither of them wants to admit it to the other person just in case the other person doesn't feel the same way, and they don't want to cross that boundary and potentially ruin their friendship. However, one day Bree is drunk in the bathroom and she ends up revealing her feelings for Nathan to another woman who just so happens to be a reporter that blasts the story, and it goes viral. The public fall in love with Nathan and Bree and their story, and they end up fake dating to please the public. The Rule Book is the next book that comes after it, and this one follows Derek and Nora. Derek is on the same football team in the NFL as Nathan, and then Nora is a sports agent. She gets assigned to be Derek's agent and represent him. However, Derek does not want anything to do with Nora because they used to date in college and they had a really bad breakup. I didn't know some of the tropes going into this one, and I feel like they kind of happen a good ways into the book, so I don't want to tell you guys, but if you want to know, it does say on the back of the book what happens. I kind of thought it was just fun to go along for the ride and figure things out as they came. I think going into a Sarah Adams book, you definitely need to know that they are going to be a little cheesy. They're very cupcake cutesy, but they just don't require a lot of thinking. You can just sit back and enjoy them and just know that they're going to be a good time. Don't take them too seriously. They're just cute and fun, but sometimes you just need that serotonin boost, and I loved both of these books for that. Next, I want to recommend a hockey romance series, and that is the Vancouver Storm series by Stephanie Archer. Books 1 and 2 are already out, and book 3 actually comes out in September, so now is the perfect time to pick these up. They are available on Kindle Unlimited, and that is how I read the first 2 books. Book 1 is Behind the Net, and this was actually the very first book that I read for the year, and it was such a great way to start out 2024. In this book, we're following our NHL goalie Jamie, and then our female main character is Pippa. Pippa ends up getting hired to be Jamie's assistant. They both knew one another in high school, but they think that the other person doesn't remember them, so they're not saying anything. Pippa is definitely our sunshiny girl. Jamie is definitely our grumpy man. Jamie is coming off very cold and rude and standoffish, and it's because when you're in his head, you see that he actually has feelings for Pippa, and he is fighting his feelings by putting up a cold exterior. Pippa, on the other hand, as our sunshiny character, is like, oh my god, why does he hate me? What did I do wrong? And it does end up following their romance, and it was just so cute. Had me kicking my feet, screaming, giggling. I was obsessed with the couple in here. I loved Behind the Net so much that I immediately picked up book 2, The Fake Out, right after. I wasn't planning to read it right after, but I just needed more. This one follows Rory and Hazel. Hazel is Pippa's sister from book 1. Rory is a guy on the same hockey team. Hazel actually works for the team as a physical therapist, I believe is her title. Rory has always had a crush on Hazel, but Hazel is not interested at all. That is until her ex ends up getting traded to be on the same hockey team as Rory. So it ends up becoming a fake dating trope to kind of show that she's moved on and to avoid her ex at all costs. Rory is so okay with the situation because Obviously, he has always liked Hazel and would like to actually be dating her, so he's kind of trying to convince her in the process to turn it from fake to real. Another one that had me kicking my feet, screaming, giggling, was rooting for the couple so hard. Stephanie Archer's writing is so bingeable, so fast-paced. I was just eating these up. The tension builds up so well, so you just cannot wait for them to get together, and it made me read it super quickly. The end of book 2 set up book 3 perfectly, so I cannot wait for more from this series. The next sports romance series I want to recommend is very popular, so I'm sure you've heard of it if you've not already read it yourself, and that is the Windy City series by Liz Tomford. What I love about this series is that it's very diverse. I think there's something in it for everyone, and it doesn't just cover one sport. It is multiple different sports. So book 1 is Mile High. It is a hockey romance following our bad boy hockey player named Xanders and the flight attendant for his team's private plane, Stevie. Stevie wants nothing to do with him because he's known as being such a player, and that motivates Xanders to convince her to date him because he's not used to not getting female attention. Book 2 is The Right Move, and it is a basketball romance following Stevie's twin brother Ryan Shea. He's an NBA star. And then we also follow Stevie's best friend Indy, who is another flight attendant on the plane. And this one is a fake dating trope, and I would say it's probably the fan favorite of the series. Book 3 is Caught Up, and we're following MLB player Kai Rhodes, who is also a single father, and his romance with the nanny that he hires named Miller. And then book 4, Play Along, is another baseball romance following Kai Rhodes' brother Isaiah, who's also in the MLB. He has always had a thing for the team doctor, Kennedy. She wants nothing to do with him, but they end up having a drunken night together in Vegas and getting married, so it becomes a marriage of convenience story. Like I said, this series I think has something for everyone. Lots of different tropes, lots of different characters, and different sports. Book 5 comes out in April, which I'm so highly anticipating. The found family in this series is amazing. Like I said, book 2, The Right Move, is probably the fan favorite. Book 1, Unpopular Opinion, is actually my very favorite of the series, and that tends to be people's least favorite. So if you go into it and absolutely hate book 1, definitely continue on because that kind of seems to be the consensus with the majority of people. I'm very much in the minority with loving that one the most, but love all of these books and this series as a whole so much. And then another very popular series that you need to pick up if you've not yet read yet is the Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver. Again, another series that I think has something for everyone because all the characters are so different from one another, and all the books have very different tropes that are all so well done. Tropes that I normally wouldn't enjoy, Elsie Silver writes them in a way that I just love. These are cowboy romances, which everyone says to give a try even if it's not your thing, because I didn't think it was my vibe at all until it was, and now I'm obsessed. Book 1 is Flawless. We were following Rhett Eaton, who is a bull rider. He has a bad reputation, and his romance with his PR agent named Summer, who's trying to turn his reputation around. Book 2 is Heartless. This is the fan favorite and also my personal favorite. This is following Kate Eaton, another one of the Eaton brothers who works on the ranch at Chestnut Springs. So he's literally a cowboy. He's also a single father. He ends up hiring Summer from book 1's best friend Willa to be the nanny for his son, and it follows their romance. Book 3 is quite different from the rest of the series, and it gets mixed reviews. I can definitely see why, because it is so different. It is a very close second favorite for me. I loved it so much. This is actually a hockey romance, which feels very out of place, but it takes place in Canada, so it makes sense. Our male main character is Jasper. He's an NHL goalie. He's not biologically an Eaton brother, but essentially he is a brother because they took him in. It is a childhood friends to lover story with the Eaton brothers' cousin, Sloane. And then book 4 is Reckless, also a fan favorite. Love this one as well. This one follows Rhett from book 1's protege Theo, another bull rider, and his romance with Summer from book 1's sister, Winter. This one is age gap and another trope that I think is kind of a spoiler, so I'm not going to tell you, but it was really well done and I loved this book. And the last book is Hopeless, which follows the last Eaton brother, Beau. He is in the military and he's coming home and trying to adjust to civilian life. It's his romance with the town bartender named Bailey, and this one is a fake engagement trope. So I think it is so fun to go in and read them all, see which one ends up being your favorite, because people definitely have different opinions on all of them. And I think, like I said, there's something in here for everyone. Elsie Silver's writing is so bingeable, so easy to read very quickly. Her books are very dialogue heavy, which I think make for a very fast-paced, engaging, and enjoyable read. The banter in them is so good. Characters and couples that you will definitely be rooting for. And then I want to close out the video by recommending some YA romance series to you guys. All these books were so enjoyable, made me so happy, and read so quickly and easily. First, I want to recommend Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. These are graphic novels. I put this series off for the longest time despite hearing such great things because I never read a graphic novel. I didn't really know what it was or what to expect, and I didn't really think it would be for me, but I am so glad I decided to pick it up and give it a try. This series follows Nick and Charlie, and they go to the same all-boys school. They are quite different from one another. Charlie is more artistic, into music. He plays the drums. Nick is more the athlete. He is on the rugby team, and he's kind of like the star player. They end up sitting next to one another in one of their classes, and they form a friendship, and then they start exploring feelings that are maybe a little bit more romantic. It is just so cute. You will be rooting for Nick and Charlie. You will be smiling ear to ear. This was just such a breath of fresh air to read. I picked it up when I was feeling a little bit slumpy, and it was just what I needed to pull me out of my slump. Such a perfect pick-me-up. It was so cute. And then I have to recommend The Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy by Jenny Han. If you've only watched the show and have not yet read the books, I would still encourage you to read the books. These are following our main character, Belly, and she has gone to the same beach every summer with her mom, her mom's best friend, and then her mom's best friend has two boys, Jeremiah and Conrad. She's always seen these boys as like brother figures or friends, but this summer things feel a little bit different. There might be some feelings between them, and it does become a love triangle between Belly and the two brothers, and the whole time it's like, which boy is she gonna choose? Who will she end up with? These books can definitely be a little immature at times, but Jenny Han's writing is so nostalgic. I loved it so much. It read so quickly. These are the perfect beach or pool reads. I read them in like 1 or 2 sittings by the pool, and it was just such an enjoyable experience. Jenny Han writes these characters in a way where you may not relate to characters of this age at the current moment, but it brings back memories to where I remember feeling like Belly did, having crushes on boys, summers growing up. Just such happy times were brought back for me when I read these, and it was just the best dose of nostalgia. Also by Jenny Han, I have to recommend the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy. These follow our main character, Laura Jean, and whenever she's had a crush on a boy, whenever she's ready to move forward and get her feelings out and close the chapter, she writes a letter to these boys, but she doesn't mail them out. She keeps them to herself as like a diary entry. But one day, somehow, these letters end up getting sent to each of the boys she's written one to, and it follows the aftermath from there. Again, Jenny Han's writing feels so nostalgic. Laura Jean is one of my favorite characters I've ever read. I related to her so much. Where I would recommend the Summer I Turned Pretty series for the summertime, I think these would be perfect to read for the fall because they take place over the course of the school year, and to me that just gives me fall vibes. I loved following Laura Jean. Her relationship with her family, with her sisters, was so special, and I really enjoyed reading about it. Again, read super quickly, so easy to binge. I also listened to these on audio, and the audiobook was incredible, so I would recommend that as well. I also loved that there is romance in here, and there's kind of a few romantic interests, so you don't really know how things are gonna end, and that just kept me reading until the very last page and made it so interesting and engaging. I was so invested in Laura Jean and her story. So those are all the books I had to recommend you guys to help pull you out of a reading slump. I hope that you took away at least one good recommendation, and I hope that it helps pull you out of a slump if you are in one. Thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy and you did take away a recommendation, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Leave me a comment and let me know which book, if any, you are planning to read. Don't forget to hit the red button down below to subscribe and stick around to my channel if you're not already, and I will see you guys so soon in the next one. Bye guys.